Hello, class. Thanks for stepping in our second podcast. This is Anastasia. She's a marketing manager at Rain, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about what she does in terms of social media marketing. So I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Yep, my name's Anastasia. I started my career in general marketing with social media, email marketing, content marketing, kind of a jack of all trades kind of thing because the company had a pretty small budget. So I kind of had to
Yeah.
do a little bit of everything. And social media, they like to give social media to the newbie,
Yep.
thinking that it's a small thing and it ends up being a giant. So it's been a lot of fun trying to learn how to manage a really small budget and
Mm.
grow a company that doesn't care about social media.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And that's something I tell about the students is social media marketing in itself could be a full-time job. And so that's
Definitely.
something that's kind of you're experiencing that right now. I think Jacob earlier today, our other guest speaker, he said that technically it's not his full time job, but it feels like one because there's so much you can do. You can always be improving it.
Yeah, and I think companies, especially if they're not working directly for a marketing company, they're not going to realize that.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess we'll jump right into the questions. I guess my first question is there anything unexpected that you've learned about social media marketing since working on it that you like to share with students or people who might work in it in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's been unexpected, honestly. I think one of the first things I learned is that you have to include images at all
Mm.
times. If you post something without an image, you're not going to get any traction, except for maybe LinkedIn might be an exception. But I kind of learned that the hard way because I had people with fancier titles than I had telling me that they wanted to post this, and they would literally send me a paragraph and be like, "Can you post this on Facebook?" And be like,
Mm.
"Okay, sure." And then they'd be upset when
Oh,
it didn't get any traction. I'm like, "All right, well, we gotta like dress it up. We gotta make it fun, make it entertaining, because otherwise, it's either not going to show up on their news feeds at all, or they're going to
mm,
scroll right on by." So that was probably more unexpected for the people around me than for me, but
yeah.
definitely
And I
something to learn right
I
in the
think
beginning.
you mentioned that it's these upper higher level people are saying, "Hey, I want this text on there." I mean, I experienced the same thing when I worked in. I ran a social media for Equity Advisor Solutions, and that's exactly what would happen. Is the vice president of sales would be like, "Hey, I want this," and you're like, "That's not gonna work." But it's really hard to prove
Yep.
it to them without initially doing it and saying, "Hey, look, nothing happening. Now watch this." So I think that's something that
Yeah,
um,
especially.
yeah, and so here's a good follow up question to that. So, how do you address that with someone who's higher up? I mean, do you try to do an A/B test and say,
Yeah,
okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, or do you kind of how do you do that without arguing? Because you don't want to argue with your boss. So, what can you give students who are going to
right.
come out there being lower, and how they can address that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to back everything up with facts, right?
Mm,
So it's harder, especially if you're at a newer company that doesn't have a lot of analytics already when you come
mm,
in. Um, it's that's the biggest challenge, I think, is when you don't already have the data. So you kind of have to create the data,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you can pull from competition too. You can do your own research and um, point to what other people are doing. You can pull from blogs like Neil Patel is a great one.
Mm,
Some of these guys who've been doing it for years and years and can show you the data, even if it's not the exact same industry or the exact same topic. They can show you what works and what doesn't. So at the very least, you have that.
yeah.
But down the line, as you start gathering your own data, it's very easy to just put together a really quick spreadsheet or PowerPoint or whatever and
Mm-hmm.
just slide it across the table and say, "This is why."
Yep. That. I mean, that's something we've talked about with the students. I know Brandon. That's kind of where he got in his job is by proving what he's doing is working. And I think it's interesting. You
Yeah,
also
so important.
listen to Neil Patel as well. I showed my class a video. He was talking about. I think it was search engine marketing and how to rank higher on Google.
Yep.
So he does have some incredible videos out there. I think that's awesome. So I guess with that we'll jump into the next question. So that's essentially a kind of a general one. Is what advice would you give to a freshman or not a freshman or like a senior coming out who's going to be like a freshman business, fresh out of college business
Yeah.
person for in terms of like working with social media marketing?
Yeah. I think I mean, there's a couple of things. For one, you always have to back it up with data, like I kind of just said.
Hmm. I love
It's
we love
very easy to
data
fall
in our
into the trap
class.
of, yeah, good. Yeah, it's very easy to fall into the trap of being that creative person that just wants to post the really funny, cool stuff.
Hmm.
But when you're in a real work environment, that doesn't fly. You have to be able to back everything up. But on that note, I feel like you always have to focus on quality over quantity.
Hmm.
I think that's something
Okay.
that's another thing, honestly, going back to your first question that was a little bit unexpected for me is that a lot of people were telling me, you have to be posting twice a day on Instagram or 3 times on Facebook or whatever. Um, so I would just be doing it, be like, okay, and I'd be rushing because I had other things to do as well. And I would post these things that were okay, but they weren't fabulous. So I didn't
Yeah.
get any engagement from them. I think in those circumstances, it's a lot better to scale back, maybe only post once a day or even a couple times a week. It's better
Mm.
to post really high quality content that you could spend a lot of time creating than to just throw things at the wall.
Okay. And so, what do you feel about recycling that quality content that you've created? Do you typically do that, or?
I do, and it does tend to work well. So I think that's a little bit different. It's one thing to just splatter things at the wall that are new and you've never tried before and probably don't look great. And
Okay.
it's another thing to say this worked really well. Let's share it again a month from now and see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's awesome advice, and that's something that even just thinking about it logically sounds kind of counterintuitive, because you hear all the time, "Oh, just throw stuff out there, it'll work," and but it's kind of cool to know that you really do have to focus on quality there in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely in the beginning. It's definitely it's a little bit different, once you have a following, but when you're just getting out there, especially if you have like a brand new Instagram profile and you only
Mm-hmm.
have 10 images you've posted, that's like your gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who's coming to your profile, if they see just not good stuff, they're probably not going to stick
Yeah,
around.
that's true. Because if you have one bad picture, that's that's 10% of your profile is bad,
Yep,
as opposed to having if you only had 9 instead of 10, it's about the same amount of pictures, but you could have 100% good quality pictures. That makes sense. Yeah,
exactly.
awesome. And so I guess the final two questions kind of go hand in hand. It's the first one is there something that has worked really well for you or for your company regarding social media marketing that you like to share? And then also, what's something that kind of failed or something that was a big learning experience for you as well?
Yeah. I think on the positive side, especially on the B2B side of things, sharing other people's content has actually worked really well for us
Hmm.
at Rain, where I am now. I mean, this is just to give you a little bit more specifics of why I think it's worked, is that we're a very new industry. What Rain does is we provide on demand pay. So it's an app that connects to payroll, and then you can collect your wages after a shift instead of waiting till payday.
Hmm.
Totally new. Companies have only been doing this for a few years. There's not a lot of research out there, not a lot of content in general. So we can create all the new content we want, and we can just keep doing that. But we have to be able to prove that we're credible and that we're real and that this is a real thing. We're not
Hmm.
just,
Yeah.
we're not the first people to do it, and you can trust us. So by sharing old content, we've actually gotten a lot more engagement than when we just post our own stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's this whole credibility issue. I know typically we talk about with students for websites an about page, but I guess for you guys, building credibility means bringing in old content from previous people who've done something similar, or maybe news articles
Right.
about something with. So you have this extra pieces of support kind of backing you up as a company, and then people trust you more in that sense. I like that. Yeah.
Right. So we do a lot of sharing, like from human resources kind of pages,
Hmm.
like, hey, this is why this is a great benefit. We have to have that other piece of credibility from somebody on the other side of the business.
Hmm. Awesome. And so I guess, do you have like a failure or a learning experience that
Yeah.
okay.
I
We all have those,
mean, I
right?
have a long list of those too. um, I think for Rain, at least where we are now, webinars and like Facebook Live and all kinds of live stuff
Hmm.
doesn't do as well as I thought it would. Um, I I don't know if it's because we don't, well, yeah, I'm still learning. I'm still doing research to figure out why it doesn't work for us yet.
Hmm.
I think it's just that we don't have a big enough following right now, and that maybe when we have a bigger following, it will work.
Okay.
But it doesn't work to draw people in.
Okay, so when you say it doesn't work, you're implying that when you do it, not enough people come. Like you might have like one or two people show up in the live video. And do you, I
Right,
know also
exactly.
typically it stays on so people can watch it later. Is that also low engagement as well?
Fairly, and I think in my mind at least right now, before I've been able to do a ton of research on it, I think because we don't have that credibility yet
Mm.
and we don't have that big following, we're literally getting like 10 likes per post right
Okay.
now because I literally created all these accounts a month ago. So
Oh, okay.
um, slim pickings. But even in my last job too, I could say the same thing, that until we actually had a following from everything else that we had been doing on socials, nobody was showing up. Nobody would watch them even after the fact. And I think it might just be like kind of like a bandwagon thing. Like people are more likely to click and keep watching when they see that a million other people are already watching.
Yep.
Um, and people are more likely to like a piece of content when they see that 1,000 people already have. I know I'm guilty of it too. If I scroll past
Yeah.
something on Facebook that already has 10,000 likes, I'm honestly more likely to click the like button just because.
Yeah, and
I don't know why.
you
It's
never
like,
want to be that one person watching the one video
yeah,
because then it's like a 1v1 video. That's
yeah,
interesting because you might consider like getting all your employees to join just to like show numbers. I mean, it might work.
yeah. And
Good
there's
artificial
definitely that,
tone, yeah.
but there's also only 7 of us. So
Yeah. Yeah, so when you post that's an interesting. So I wonder if that's as much as you say you're working on need to build a following up, but if you posted the exact same content via a video that wasn't Facebook Live, have you compared the differences in there or
yeah, I think video in general hasn't done as well. It might have something to do with the industries I've been in as well.
okay.
Um, I think it's hard to make a blanket statement about social media like that. But,
Yeah.
even now being at kind of a human resources company and previously working in health insurance, um, they're just not high engagement fields to begin with. So I think
Mhm.
people just want their information as quick as possible. A video or a live feed is not going to be the way to do that. So
Yeah.
at that point, it's just about knowing your audience and knowing that they want to scroll by, see something cool, go, cool, and then keep
Mhm.
going. They don't want to sit there and watch a 3-minute video.
Yeah, and I've noticed. So a lot of times I heard a lot of talk in the past couple of years about Facebook prioritizing videos because you get people to stay there longer, then they get more money from it. But I've also
Yeah.
noticed that I typically get better interaction. This happened like a week ago. I posted a video of my son on the boat, and then I posted a picture of him on the boat, and the picture got about twice as many likes as the video, and it was posted about almost exactly the same time. And I was wondering about that. And then I was thinking back to it. And I was like, maybe Facebook is realizing that people use social media at work. They use it out in public. They use it when they're around people and they don't necessarily like the sound that comes from videos. So maybe they're giving more
Yeah.
weight to images now instead of videos. I mean, it's something we don't really know because Facebook changes their algorithm daily. But that's interesting, and that's
Yeah.
something
That's
that you might be
interesting.
seeing. I guess it takes more testing to figure out, right?
Lots of testing. I was actually just reading something from HubSpot about how Instagram doesn't actually place any higher value for video versus photo.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that. I don't know that much about Instagram's algorithm, but I was just surprised because I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I really do feel like I see a lot more photos on Instagram than videos, even though
Mm-hmm.
I know that people are posting videos. So I don't know if it has to do with my habits and how the algorithm kind of molds
Mm.
itself to me, or
Yeah.
if they actually are putting a little bit more weight on photos.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because I've noticed the same thing. Maybe it's cognitive dissonance that we're noticing this, but maybe it's
Yeah.
something that we just kind of it just kind of exists, and that's the way they've learned. Because we know social media is always adapting. So
Right.
it's interesting. But I guess that's all the questions. Unless there's anything you'd like to add, thank you for coming on here and talking. I'm great. I'm sure you have great information that you've shared with my students. I'm sure they're gonna appreciate getting your insight into what it's like in the out in the field as opposed to hearing it just from me. It probably gets boring hearing the
Yeah.
same lectures over and over again. So thank you, Anastasia, for coming on.
Happy to help.
So thank you.